Hi, Gooby here. Today I'd like to talk about a current of hate that is resurfacing. It is sort of like a spirit that has possessed a lot of people. That's what I want to talk about today. There's a lot that's happening in the world, and I'm very concerned. I'm very concerned about how people can treat other people with hate, with violence, with destruction, and then just go about their day. In fact, happy about it, rejoicing in it, celebrating it, and continuing to do that. It's a very dark side of humanity, but the dark side is very prevalent right now. So that's what I want to talk about today, and how this dark side is always there. It's always there. It's always part of us. But at times, we choose to live out that part of our lives. We choose the actions that let that side of us thrive. At times. At other times, we choose other qualities that are inside of us too. Qualities like loving our neighbor, appreciating and celebrating differences, coexisting, sharing. Well, now is not one of those times. And I wanted to share some stories from when I was growing up that I think highlight what this is, because it's hard to see it for what it is, because it wraps itself in so many lies that it's hard to name it. It shapeshifts right in front of our eyes to look like whatever would make us feel good about ourselves. It appeals to the ego. It tells us sweet stories. It sings enchanting songs. It tempts us with shiny things. So I'm going to tell some stories of growing up in Oklahoma and tie them to today. Now, as I'm talking, Doobie and I are sitting in front of a river in the Washington Cascade Mountains, and there's salmon coming upstream over there. There's about 100 salmon or so just resting in the waters over here after making up this kind of difficult part. So if you see splashes over there, that's salmon that are very tired. They're swimming upstream to complete their life cycle, where they will mate and lay their eggs, spawn the eggs, and bury the eggs under some gravel so that little baby salmon are born. The mommy and daddy salmon, they die. This is the end of their life. This is the end of their life cycle. They reproduce and then they die. The babies swim out to the ocean and then grow up to become adults to come back to the same place where they're born. The mommy and daddy, their bodies carry nutrients from the ocean that are hard to come by in the mountains, like phosphorus. By swimming up these creeks into the mountains, they bring life into the mountains. Their bodies provide life-giving nutrients to the other fish, the birds, the insects, the trees, the animals, the bears. The trees soak up the nutrients in their roots and incorporate it into their bodies. It's really a fascinating story of life and how life is all interconnected. And we are no different. Human beings, we like to think of ourselves as separate from nature, but we're not. We're all very connected. With that being said, I'm going to dive into some stories. Oklahoma is where I spent my whole childhood and teenage years, from age 2 until 17. Oklahoma is a really nice place to grow up in the late 80s and 90s. It was a really nice place to grow up. Peaceful. Lots of woods, lakes, streams, creeks. I lived in a city called Tulsa that my house was kind of like at the outskirts of the city, bordering the farmland. I could bicycle to my friend's place and hang out with them. We could bicycle everywhere, and we just hung out outside and had fun and told each other jokes and teased each other and just played games. It was a pretty cool childhood. Did not have social media then. So in order to hang out, you'd have to go bicycle to your friend's house or get your parents to drop you off or something. Looking back at how I was educated, I think it sheds some light on how people can hurt each other. So, Oklahoma is a state that was originally reservation land. Actually, originally it was Native Americans living there, but then Native Americans farther east in the eastern states of the United States were removed because the white settlers wanted that land for themselves to use how they thought was best. And so they rounded up the Native Americans and moved them to Oklahoma, a land that nobody thought that they would ever want until later when they found oil underneath it. But they moved several tribes out of the southeast of the United States to Oklahoma. One tribe agreed to move for a certain amount of money. Multiple tribes did not agree to move, but then were forcibly moved. And then one tribe in particular, the Seminoles in Florida, they fought 3 wars because they refused to move. And 90% of the tribe was either killed or removed in chains to the reservations. But 10% remained. So one of the only tribes nations to remain on their original territory, although a much smaller amount of their territory, just the swamps and the Everglades that the white settlers didn't feel like chasing them out of. It's a really sad story. It's called the Trail of Tears for some of the tribes because a lot of people died in this ethnic cleansing and land theft. I mean, that's what it is. Ethnic cleansing and land theft and genocide. This is early America. This is Oklahoma. As white settlers multiplied, and there's more and more of them, and they started moving west, they came to Oklahoma, where the land was given to these tribes. And they wanted the land. Even though it was already given, but then it was taken back. The reservations were decreased in size multiple times. And at one point, there was something called the land rush, where a big chunk of land was essentially put up for anyone to go and grab. On a particular day, at a particular time, after the gunshot, you could ride your horse or wagon or whatever and take your family and stake out a parcel of land and register it with the state. That land was this part that was given to all these Native Americans, but now it's given to white settlers. That's Oklahoma land rush. It's an interesting part of Oklahoma history, and it's one that's reenacted in elementary schools. At least it was when I was in elementary school. I believe it was 4th grade. We were in the back of the school. There's a big field, and we all lined up at the border of the field with our wagons. All of us are divided into groups of 4. Each group of 4 has a mommy settler, a daddy settler, a baby settler, and an Indian. And the 4 of us work as a group to go stake out our piece of land. We have a pull wagon with wheels and 4 pieces of stick that we can put in the ground and some string to mark off our territory. And it was a very exciting day. I was so excited to do this. I got to be outside and play with my friends, and I get to be an Indian. Well, I'm one of the few non-whites in that school, so of course I'm going to be the Indian. But I always thought it was weird. It's like, well, how is the Indian related to the mommy and daddy? Is the Indian another daddy? The things that kids think. I think kids I think look at things a little bit more clear-eyed. There's a lot of weird things about this retelling of the land rush. First of all, the Indian is riding with the white settlers in their wagon to have the land together. Like, that's not what happened. Why would you tell that story that way? Where did this land come from? We weren't told that. Who did it belong to before it was given to the white settlers of the land rush? We weren't told that either. Why would you say that? Why would you say it that way? Okay, well that's one. Another story. I didn't know, despite growing up in Tulsa, that there was a Tulsa massacre. I didn't know for a decade after I moved out of Oklahoma. I was watching TV one day and I saw I was looking on the internet, YouTube, and I saw a preview of some TV show that was about a massacre that happened in Tulsa to African American people. And I was watching the preview and I was like, wow, this is a very interesting alternate history take. Like this is like Man in the High Castle, where people imagine what it would have been like if the Nazis won World War II. And wow, that's an interesting story. And I was like, wait, well, this seems pretty real. And then I looked it up and I was like, holy crap, this actually happened. Why didn't I know about this? Because I grew up in Tulsa, Oklahoma. I have a great interest in history, even though I spent most of my time studying science. History is always my favorite subject. Well, that and literature. So I remember my classes in Oklahoma history and U.S. history. I don't remember ever learning about the Tulsa massacre. I didn't know until someone made a TV show about it, and I thought it was actually fiction, but it wasn't. What it was way before I was born, there was a black community that was thriving. They were very wealthy. In fact, it was called the Black Wall Street of America in Tulsa. And there was a young man who was accused of making advances to a white woman operating an elevator. And that black man was put in jail, and a white mob was going to lynch him. Well, the black community came out and trying to protect him, and there was a shootout. People died. In the aftermath, the white community of the surrounding area came and shot at the black people and burned their part of the town down. Essentially razed it to the ground. That is the Tulsa massacre. I did not know about that. Why? Why is that not talked about? I mean, now it's actually part of required curriculum to be talked about, but not when I was in school. Why not? That happened a long time ago. Now, these are just questions I'm posing. I'll come back to them. This is the last story. And the reason why I'm telling stories from the past is because I think it's easier to think about them because they're more removed in time from our own egos. So we can look at them and with a little bit more objective view. This last story of posterity, history, I'm going to tell, happened in Colorado, not Oklahoma. It's the 1860s. A contingent of the U.S. Army led by a Christian pastor. He was a pastor, but he was also the commander. Led his soldiers to massacre women and children of the Cheyenne and Arapaho Native Americans at a place called Sand Creek. Shooting them, and then mutilating their dead bodies, cutting off genitalia, ears, scalps, and parading those body parts, like the genitalia, on their hats, garments, and horses, and their saddles, as they rode back into town to brag about what they had done. Nobody was sent to prison. Nobody was reprimanded. Nobody was put on trial for genocide. The society approved of that. How did they get there? Looking back, I think most people would say, wow, those are some horrible stories, Gooby. Gosh, people can do some awful things. I think most people would say that. I think a small minority would say, oh, those people deserved it. I think there's all kinds of responses that you can have to these stories. Some people will say that's fake news. Now, why would people omit or change stories of wrongdoing, of hurt to our neighbors? Well, I think that is very hard to sit with ourselves if we think we're bad people, if we've done bad things, if we've done evil. We like to think of ourselves as good people that don't do wrong, that we treat our neighbors with love. We're good neighbors. It's just those pesky other people that they're criminals, or they mess up things. They're rapists, or they're psychopaths. Yeah, those people deserve some bad things coming to them, and we did those bad things, but they deserved it. But we're not going to talk about it because maybe they weren't so bad after all, and maybe we're the bad guys. So we shouldn't talk about it. And if we do talk about it, we should whitewash it and make it into a happy story where Indians and white settlers took their wagons together and had families together. It's like, okay, that's weird. Or if you do talk about it and what actually happened, well, you actually hate your country. You hate your community. There's so many layers of psychic defenses to not think about this. And those are things that people say. They say, if you talk about this, they say, well, you hate your country. I'm like, no, actually I don't. I think actually talking about this is actually showing love for my country. Because if you don't talk about the dark side of humans, the shadow side, that shadow side takes over. If you think you're just a good person and you can't do wrong, that's when you do the worst wrong. That's when you do the worst evil. Every person has good and evil in them. Alexander Solzhenitsyn, a Russian who spent time in gulags, prisons in Siberia, as a prisoner, he said the line, I believe it was him, he said the line between good and evil runs to the heart of every person. We all have the capability to love or to hurt, to hate, to take care of, to appreciate, to expel, exile, to steal, to give, to be generous, to be selfish, to feed the ego, to keep the ego in check, to be connected, to isolate. We have all those things in every one of us. And I think to not talk about these stories of what has been done is to hide, to let the ego take over, to allow harm to continue to be perpetrated to ourselves and our neighbors. So I think actually talking about these stories and really accepting them and thinking about them is actually an act of love for myself, my community, my neighbors, and my country. That's what I'm talking about. These stories, I think, show that America has a lot of good things, but it has a very dark shadow, a shadow past that we don't like to talk about, that we don't like to acknowledge. That part of America is still present, and it's coming back with a resurgence of hate. these days we've got people cheering on the essentially ethnic cleansing of the country. It's happening again. History, it doesn't repeat, but it rhymes. We're rounding up people that look Mexican or look like a foreigner. Maybe they don't speak English very well. Maybe they hang out in a community of other people that look a little different. Maybe they don't believe the right things. Maybe they don't have the jobs that people find desirable, and so people look at them as less than themselves. It's okay if they disappear. Who cares? Some people might say. Other people might say it's a good thing they disappeared because they're all criminals and rapists and up to no good. That's a lie. Everyone has some criminals in their group of people, but to label a whole group of people as criminals and psychopaths is propaganda. It's a way to trick people into going along with this plan. There is a temptation that people think that they're in the in group. One week, they're like, oh, I am glad that the government or whoever is snatching up those people off the street and getting rid of them because they're bad people, and man, I don't really like them, never liked them, and more space for me. Heck, that guy that had the shop across the street, now that he's gone, I can just take over that market. That's some good real estate. Next week comes, bigger group of people, bigger group of minorities are attacked, brutalized, terrorized. Whether they're legally here or not legally here, whether they're citizens, legal residents, they're attacked. And, well, I think I'm part of the in-group, so I'm like, ha, look at those suckers. They deserved what was coming for them. Next week, it's a different minority group. This time, no, they're kind of similar to me, but I'm not in that group. I'm kind of similar to them. But it's not me, so good riddance. They belong in whatever like third world country that we're exiling people to now, or putting them in concentration camps and disappearing them. They deserve that. And then the next week, now I'm in that minority group. What? The hurt wasn't meant for me. It was meant for the other people. They deserve to be hurt, not me. I'm in the in group. But those pleas fall on deaf ears. The people that would have cared, they were taken away already. At some point, you're not pure enough. You're not white enough. You're not the right kind of Christian. You're not the right kind of ideology. At some point, you get booted off the island too. That's the natural course of the current path that we're on. This path of fascism. It's a path that ends in, I think, a lot of suffering for everybody. It's very concerning to watch. It can be really befuddling too, because I see friends and family that are clearly not in the in-group cheering this on, thinking that they are in the in-group. I'm like, you're not in the in-group. You may think you are, but it's just a matter of time before you're not. Why are you doing that? Why are you cheering on the hurting of our neighbors? The ego can be so tricky. It can serve us these really beautiful looking stories on a platter. These lies that are so attractive, like, oh gosh, it would really be comfortable to believe that lie. Man, life would be so much simpler I think I'm going to just believe that, because real life is way more complicated and with nuance. I think that's where a lot of people are. And with social media that I needn't remind you, but I guess I still do, or I will, that is owned by billionaires that have certain agendas, and they control which stories are propagated. Social media, mass media. It's hard to tell what people actually believe anymore, because certain stories are amplified. Bot armies are out there just like steering discourse in the comments and the posts. How do you know what most of your neighbors believe anymore? Are they all in on this too? Does it I think social media would make you believe that everybody is in on this, and they just want their neighbors hurt and disappeared, or worse, murdered. I think social media has an incentive to make you think that, because out of that fear you will keep clicking and you will keep watching, and you will be addicted to the social media algorithm that feeds you this fear. Well, there was an event that happened, and this is the last story I'll tell, that I think brings some hope to the situation. Yesterday, I believe it was yesterday, something happened at the University of Washington campus. There was a young man who went in front of a psychology class of, I think, a couple hundred students, maybe 100 students, maybe a couple hundred. It seemed like a big class. And he started saying, like, Sieg Heil, and doing Nazi salutes, and I don't know what else he said, but essentially pro-Nazi statements and hand gestures and body movements. Well, that class promptly chased him out of the auditorium into the main common area. I think 100 students. You can watch it on social media. I mean, it's a huge mob of people chased this guy out, and essentially cornered him. And I think there were a few punches and kicks thrown, but it's not like he had a bloody nose. The cops took him away. Now, I don't know what the aftermath of all of that was. I don't know if he was a student. I don't know if he just lived nearby and was wanting to be a dick to people. I don't know. But that story gives me hope that there are a lot of reasonable people out there that don't agree with this rhetoric of hate, this glorification of the ego at the expense of everyone else, this story of celebrating the suffering of your neighbors. There's a lot of people that want to live and coexist in peace and wish for the well-being of our neighbors and celebrate our differences. And they're willing to confront people that have essentially become possessed with that spirit of hate and have fully taken up the lies that the ego tells us. Now some of you may say, well, that's not freedom of speech. I have to be clear that freedom of speech, as from the First Amendment, our constitutional right in the United States, is that the government can't prevent you from speaking what you want to. It's a protection against government interference. It's not a protection of getting your face punched in if you're a dick to people. Freedom of speech is not freedom from consequences. I think that's sometimes lost on people. But I feel like social media has, in a way, become a megaphone for certain people filled with hate to spread that hate and make it seem like it's more prevalent than it is. And I think it is very prevalent, though. I mean, I know just from friends and family that have bought into all this propaganda and rhetoric. With this, they've really become possessed by this way of thinking. This way of preserving yourself at all costs, no matter how much destruction you bring on your neighbors and your environment. I think that really comes from a place of fearing death. It fears the loss of the ego. It fears becoming inconsequential. But all that's really an illusion. We're all alive. We're all consequential. We're all part of this grand thing. Everything's connected. I mean, I talked about the salmon and how their bodies are connected to the whole forest in the mountain. And every living creature that's in the mountain. I'm sitting here with a dog on my lap. We're all connected. We're all significant. This lie that tries to seduce us to think, well, we have to hurt other people to become significant and to survive. Well, that's a lie. You don't. Well, I guess this is an aside, but I guess animals do have to kill some in order to survive. We cannot take energy directly from the sun. We have to get our energy from plants or animals. And that often includes killing, but not always. You can harvest berries and nuts and things like that. That's an aside. So there is some killing that is necessary for just being alive. But this idea that you have to kill your neighbors, I don't think is true. You don't have to kill your neighbors to survive, to be significant, to be important in some way. That's a lie. No one needs to do that to be significant. To keep from fading into nothingness. We're all here. We're all something. You're alive. I'm alive. We're all part of this really big connected web. Yeah. Well, those are the stories that I wanted to share, and my thoughts about this this current of hate that has resurfaced. It's like a spirit that's possessed a lot of people in society. It's highly concerning. I've been just watching this happen in my country and in other countries, and it's getting worse. And it is very concerning. And I think the worst thing that anyone can do is not talk about it. To hide it under the rug, to whitewash it, make it seem like it's something it's not. Looking at reality is really tough. Looking at the reality of ourselves and how we do both good and bad things, good and evil, that's really hard. But you know what? Swimming upstream, up into a mountain, that's really hard too. And the fish do that. They know to do that. They just do it. These fish are really tired. I was watching them before I made this video, and they look exhausted. But they're coming up, they're swimming upstream, up into a mountain from the ocean to do what they need to do, what they want to do. And that is to be part of this life. If they didn't do this, well, there wouldn't be salmon babies and there wouldn't be salmon anymore. And life in the mountains would suffer a lot because those salmon actually bring a lot of life-giving nutrients from the ocean. So, life's not easy. Looking at ourselves is not easy. But I think we need to look at ourselves, no matter how hard it is. We need to tell the stories of our experience and history without changing it to make our egos feel good. I think telling the truth from our experiences, it's actually loving. It's loving each other, it's loving ourselves, it's loving this life we have. Well, that's the end of this story. Thanks for listening to it.